Growing up, I always knew there was a difference between my sister Chloe and me. When Chloe entered a room, everyone smiled. My parents rushed to hear her stories. My grandparents praised every little thing she did. Birthdays, school achievements, dance recitals, everything somehow revolved around her. I told myself it didn't matter. I worked hard in school, built a successful career, and learned to celebrate my own victories even when nobody else did. But a small part of me always hoped that one day my family would see me the way they saw Chloe. That hope grew stronger when I got engaged to Ethan. For the first time in my life, I felt truly loved. Ethan wasn't just my fiancé, he was my best friend. He listened when I spoke, remembered the little things, and made me feel important. When we started planning our wedding, I was determined to make it a day filled with happiness. For nearly a year, I planned every detail. I chose the flowers myself. I spent weeks comparing venues. I carefully selected songs that held special meaning for Ethan and me. Most importantly, I imagined my family sitting proudly in the front row. Maybe this would finally be the day they showed up for me. 1 week before the wedding, Chloe called. "Guess what?" she said excitedly. "What?" "I'm throwing a huge birthday party next Saturday." I laughed. "That's my wedding day." "I know," she replied casually. I waited for her to explain. She didn't. Instead, she started talking about celebrity DJs, expensive decorations, and dozens of guests. Something felt wrong. When I mentioned it to my mother later that evening, she brushed it off. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "People can attend both." I wanted to believe her, but as the week passed, strange things started happening. My aunt called and said she might be late. My cousin suddenly wasn't sure she could make it. Even my grandparents seemed hesitant when I asked if they needed transportation to the venue. A knot formed in my stomach. Still, I convinced myself everything would be fine. Then my wedding morning arrived. I woke up excited and nervous. The sun was shining. My dress hung perfectly in the bridal suite. My bridesmaids helped me get ready while soft music played in the background. For a few hours, I forgot my worries. Then my phone started buzzing. First came a text from my aunt. "Sorry, sweetheart, something came up." A few minutes later, my cousin canceled. Then another relative. And another. My hands started shaking. I called my mother. She didn't answer. I called my father, straight to voicemail. Finally, I opened social media. My heart stopped. Photos from Chloe's birthday party were already being posted. My parents were there. My grandparents were there. My aunts, uncles, cousins, every single person who had promised to attend my wedding was smiling in those pictures. Together at her party, not one of them was coming. I stared at the screen while tears blurred my vision. Months of planning, years of hoping, a lifetime of trying to earn their love, and they had chosen Chloe once again? A knock sounded at the door. Ethan stepped inside. The moment he saw my face, he knew. Without saying a word, he wrapped his arms around me. As I cried against his shoulder, something inside me quietly broke. But something else was born as well. For the first time in my life, I stopped hoping my family would choose me, and although I didn't know it yet, that decision was about to change everything. The wedding went on without them. I wish I could say I stopped crying the moment I walked down the aisle, but the truth is more complicated. Every empty seat felt like a fresh wound. The entire front row, reserved for my parents, grandparents, and closest relatives, remained painfully vacant. People noticed. Some guests whispered. Others looked away politely. Ethan's family tried their best to fill the silence with warmth and kindness. His mother hugged me before the ceremony and told me how beautiful I looked. His father proudly walked me down the aisle when it became clear my own father wasn't coming. Their support helped, but it couldn't completely erase the hurt. As Ethan and I exchanged vows, I focused on the man standing in front of me. I reminded myself that this day was about our future, not my family's choices. For a few precious hours, I managed to forget. Then the reception began. One of my bridesmaids quietly pulled me aside. "You should probably see this." She handed me her phone. Social media was flooded with photos from Chloe's party. My mother was dancing. My father was laughing. My cousins were posing beside giant decorations that looked like they had cost thousands of dollars. The captions hurt even more. "Best party of the year. So glad the whole family could be together. Perfect day with the people I love most, the whole family." Together without me, I handed the phone back before the tears returned. That night, after the reception ended, dozens of messages arrived. Most weren't apologies. Instead, they were excuses. Traffic was terrible. We meant to stop by later. It was just bad timing. Don't make a big deal out of this. Not a big deal. They had missed one of the most important days of my life. During our honeymoon, I stopped answering completely. The phone continued ringing, texts continued arriving, voicemails piled up. I ignored every single one. For the first time, I wasn't chasing them. I wasn't begging for attention. I wasn't trying to earn their affection. Instead, I spent my days enjoying quiet mornings with Ethan. We walked along beaches, explored small towns, and talked for hours about our future. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. One evening, as we watched the sunset, Ethan asked a question. "What if you stopped trying?" I looked at him. "What do you mean? What if you accepted that they may never become the family you deserve?" His words stayed with me. Back home, I began noticing things I had ignored for years. When Chloe forgot a birthday, everyone laughed it off. When I missed a family event because of work, I was criticized. When Chloe needed money, my parents rushed to help. When I needed support, I was told to figure things out myself. The wedding wasn't the first betrayal. It was simply the biggest one, the final proof. One evening, I sat alone looking through old family photographs. Picture after picture showed the same story, Chloe in the center, everyone else surrounding her. I was always somewhere near the edge. For years, I had convinced myself things would change. Now I knew better. I closed the photo album and made a decision. I blocked every family group chat. I stopped answering calls. I stopped reaching out. If they wanted Chloe to be the center of their world, they could have her. I was done competing for a place in their hearts. What I didn't know was that this decision would become the turning point of my life. Because while my family continued living as if nothing had happened, Ethan and I were about to build something extraordinary. And someday, the people who abandoned me would desperately wish they had chosen differently. The first few months after cutting contact with my family were harder than I expected. Even though they had hurt me, part of me still missed them. I missed holiday dinners. I missed hearing my grandparents' voices. I even missed the routine of checking family group chats every morning. But every time I felt tempted to call them, I remembered those empty seats at my wedding. I remembered opening social media and seeing my entire family celebrating with Chloe, while Ethan and I exchanged vows without them. That memory kept me moving forward. Instead of dwelling on the past, I poured my energy into my future. For years, I had dreamed of starting my own event, planning business. Ironically, planning my wedding had shown me just how much I loved organizing memorable experiences. With Ethan's encouragement, I took the risk. At first, it was a small operation run from our spare bedroom. I handled everything myself: marketing, scheduling, budgeting, client meetings, and event design. The days were long. The nights were longer. But for the first time in my life, I was building something that belonged entirely to me. Ethan stood beside me through every challenge. Whenever I doubted myself, he reminded me how capable I was. Whenever a client complimented my work, he celebrated as if I had won an award. Together, we slowly turned a dream into reality. 1 year passed, then 2. Business exploded. Word of mouth recommendations brought more clients than I could handle. Corporate events, weddings, charity galas, and private celebrations filled my calendar. Soon I hired employees, then a manager, then a second office location. The little business that started in our spare room became one of the most respected event companies in the city. For the first time, I felt truly successful. More importantly, I felt happy. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I received a message from an unfamiliar number. "Hi, Emma, it's Mom. Please call me." I stared at the screen. The message felt strange, almost desperate. I ignored it. The next day, another text arrived, then another. Within a week, messages started coming from cousins, aunts, and uncles I hadn't heard from in years. Suddenly, everyone wanted to reconnect. No one mentioned the wedding. No one apologized. They simply acted as though the past had never happened. I ignored every message. A few days later, I learned why they were contacting me. A mutual friend accidentally revealed the truth. Chloe's life had fallen apart. For years, she had maintained an expensive lifestyle far beyond her means. Luxury vacations, designer clothes, constant parties. Eventually the bills caught up with her. Massive debt followed. Then came failed business investments, then lawsuits, then bankruptcy. My parents had spent much of their savings trying to rescue her. Now they were struggling financially too. Suddenly, the family's golden child wasn't shining anymore. And the daughter they ignored had become successful. The timing wasn't a coincidence. For weeks, I continued ignoring every attempt at contact. Then, one Friday afternoon, my phone erupted. Call after call after call. The screen wouldn't stop lighting up. Mom, Dad, Aunt Sarah, Uncle David, 3 cousins, 2 grandparents, more unknown numbers. By the time the ringing finally stopped, I checked my phone. 36 missed calls, 36. The same people who couldn't spare a few hours for my wedding had somehow found time to call me 36 times in one day. I sat quietly in my office staring at the screen. Years ago, I would have answered immediately. Years ago, I would have rushed to help. But I wasn't that woman anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one chasing my family's attention. Now they were chasing mine, and deep down, I already knew exactly why. They needed something. The only question was how much. And after everything they had done, they were about to discover that the daughter they abandoned had finally learned her worth. 36 missed calls. I stared at the number for a long time. A few years earlier, seeing my family desperately trying to reach me would have filled me with hope. I would have convinced myself they finally missed me, that they finally cared, but now I knew better. People who truly cared didn't skip your wedding. They didn't leave empty seats where their love should have been. They didn't disappear until they needed something. That evening, I showed Ethan the list of missed calls. He looked at me carefully. "What do you want to do?" I thought about it for a moment, then I smiled. "I want answers." A week later, I agreed to meet them. The gathering took place at a restaurant near my office. When I arrived, every member of my family was already seated. My parents, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. Even Chloe. For a brief moment, I felt like I had stepped back into the past. Then I remembered the wedding. The empty chairs, the broken promises, the tears, and the feeling disappeared. My mother stood up first. "Emma," she said, tears forming in her eyes, "we've missed you so much." I took my seat calmly. "Have you?" An uncomfortable silence filled the table. My father cleared his throat. "We know things haven't been perfect." I almost laughed. "Not perfect." Nobody responded. Finally, Chloe spoke. We made mistakes, such a small word for such a large betrayal. Then the real reason for the meeting emerged. My parents were drowning in debt. The loans they had taken to help Chloe had become overwhelming. Bills were piling up. Creditors were calling daily. They needed financial help. Specifically, they needed my help. As they explained their situation, I listened quietly. No anger, no shouting, no tears, just silence. When they finally finished, my mother reached for my hand. "You're successful now, Emma. We were hoping family could help family. Family," the word struck me like a distant echo. Slowly, I opened my purse and removed something I had brought with me. My wedding album. Confused, everyone watched as I opened it. I turned page after page until I reached a photograph taken during the ceremony. Then I placed it in the center of the table. The image showed rows of guests and an entire front section of empty seats reserved for them. Nobody spoke. My mother's face turned pale. My father's eyes dropped to the table. Even Chloe looked away. "Do you remember this?" I asked quietly. The silence answered for them. "You keep talking about family." I continued. "But family doesn't abandon someone on the most important day of their life." Tears filled my mother's eyes. "We're sorry," my father nodded. "We were wrong." For the first time, the apologies sounded genuine. But apologies couldn't rewrite history. I closed the album, then I gave them my answer, no. Shock spread across the table. I wasn't going to pay their debts. I wasn't going to rescue them from the consequences of their choices. That was my revenge, not cruelty, not humiliation, simply refusing to sacrifice myself again. However, I wasn't leaving them with nothing. I handed my father a folder containing information about financial advisors, debt restructuring programs, and legal resources that could help them recover. "I hope you find a solution," I said. Then I stood. For years I had wanted their approval, their attention, their love. But as I walked toward the exit with Ethan waiting beside the door, I realized something important. I didn't need any of it anymore. My happiness had never depended on them. Outside, Ethan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Behind us, my family remained at the table, staring at the wedding photograph that reminded them of everything they had lost. A year later, Ethan and I celebrated our wedding anniversary, surrounded by friends, employees, and people who had become our true family. As laughter filled the room, I thought about those empty seats one last time. Then I smiled, because the greatest revenge wasn't making them suffer. It was building a beautiful life without them, and proving to myself that I had always been enough.